look like you're in a cool vibe over there.
No, I got to just turn on the lights above the chair here. Hang on.
No, don't do it.
Members of council, thank you. And tonight's viewing audience, if you've joined us on YouTube, thanks for joining us. If you wouldn't mind standing for a moment of silent reflection and remain standing for whole Canada. Thank you. Members of council, have you had a chance to look at items on the agenda? Is there any conflict of interest for nothing on the agenda? Okay, if something should arise, please let us know and the minutes will reflect that. Adoption of the minutes of the meeting held February 23rd, 2020 be adopted as presented. Moved by Deputy Mayor Milosh and Deputy Councillor Jeff Reno. Sorry, I'm just going to reorganize my screen so I can have all the councillors together and I won't have to search all over. Just give me a minute. It changes on its own free will. Usually it's not like this. Thank you. Okay, Mayor's comments. I'm just going to read this. The City of Windsor and the County of Essex are developing the Regional Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. The goal of the plan is to create a community where everyone feels safe, has a sense of belonging, has access to services and opportunities, and can have their needs met. Engaging a diverse range of voices is critical to developing a plan that aligns with the best interest of all residents and reflects the unique needs of each of the 8 municipalities. A community survey closes on March 15th. Please take the time to participate by answering the survey. Visit our website at lasalle.ca for more information. Thank you. Presentations, none. Public hearings. Delegations. We have delegations from Serenity Circle. We have Stephen Shanfield and Mr. Bernie Reno. We will have Mr. Mara speak first, then Mr. Shanfield for 5 minutes and Mr. Reno for a further 5 minutes. Mr. Mara, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council, tonight's report in front of you is regarding a community mailbox at Serenity Circle. This report in front of you tonight is the subject of a petition. The petition is enclosed as part of the documents, as part of the report as Appendix 1. In that petition, there's a number of items contained within that petition. So this report is only dealing with the community mailbox. So that is specific to this request. Mr. Shanfield, the organizer of the petition, had requested to separate this out from the others. And that occurred sometime late January, early February. So town administration worked diligently to bring this forward in a timely manner once we knew the requester wanted to separate out the items. So certainly this is before you tonight with respect to just the item relative to the community mailbox. A little bit of background information on this particular request. So council did deal with the community mailbox in 2017. Enclosed as Appendix 2A and 2B respectively is the original administrative report, PW 2217, and also as Exhibit 2B is the addendum information that was submitted as part of that council meeting from the delegates at that time. The previous report, hopefully council had an opportunity to review it, explains a number of administrative levels and recommendations with respect to how mailbox are decided as part of developments, where they go, and the involvement of the town in consultation with Canada Post. Certainly, the issue of back in 2017 at this location was there was a temporary mailbox at that location, and the developer was working on finalizing the permanent final location, which was proposed to be on Ellis. It has since been constructed on Ellis, as well as completing all of the relative sidewalks. Also back in 2017, when this matter was heard before council, there was an outstanding Canada Post Ombudsman review. I will circle back to the Ombudsman review later on in my presentation. There's some additional information that has come forward as part of the addendum that was issued yesterday. So certainly back at the July 25th, 2017 council meeting, the recommendation from administration at that time was to leave status quo and support the location of the permanent mailbox on Ellis. Council at that time did, in fact, turn that recommendation down, and council did issue a letter of support to Canada Post in an effort to assist the residents in relocation of the mailbox at that time. Certainly, you'll see as Appendix 3 and Appendix 4, with Exhibit 3 and Exhibit 4, with Exhibit 3 being the meeting minutes as recorded by the clerk of the July 25th, 2017 meeting. And certainly as Exhibit 4 was a copy of the letter that was sent to Canada Post. Certainly notwithstanding council support at that time, Canada Post still issued and rendered their decision, and certainly the permanent mailbox was placed at its proposed location on Ellis. Certainly Canada Post, in consultation with the municipality during development stages, we do work through where community mailboxes should be placed. And certainly this location was always shown on the engineering drawings, and that is an attachment to one of the original reports, and always has been shown on Ellis Street. So certainly since 2017, again, I've had an opportunity to review what has changed and what is occurring. And today, my recommendation still is maintained with respect to not placing a community mailbox in the middle of the road within a island in a median within the middle of the road, and maintaining the existing community mailbox on Ellis Street where it's currently located and permanently constructed by Canada Post. Certainly that location is well connected to Serenity Circle by sidewalks on both sides of Serenity Circle, even around the cul-de-sac. So all residents have ability to walk to the sidewalk, to the mailbox on a sidewalk. There is accessible wheelchair ramps at all the crossing locations that allow accessibility, and it meets all of those criteria. Enclosed as Exhibit 5 is actually a photo that I have taken on February 19th. In order to expedite this, again, we were working within the time frame to get this before council. Mr. Shanfield was pretty anxious to get this in front of council, so we worked, and unfortunately, the timing of when I took it was after a snowfall. Certainly, you can see within the aspect of the picture, and I believe within the addendum, you see some of the other pictures where it doesn't have any snow, so you can certainly visualize and see the location of the proposed community mailbox within the island. Certainly, yes, modifications can be made to the snow plowing effort. Where we do have islands, the snow plow operators typically push the snow into the islands. Again, council is aware when we snow plow, we push the snow to the side of the road and in front of all the driveways. And council has been a number of times called with about the windrows that are left behind. Certainly, if the community mailbox ended up going in the center of the road, all that snow would end up being pushed to probably the right-hand side of that picture and probably create a windrow within those driveways that are on the right-hand side, because it is an eastbound truck that would push that material into that area. And as the islands move and decrease, the road is actually wider, so there's actually more snow to deal with. You can also see in that picture in the far back, there is a pile of snow in the cul-de-sac area, pushed up on the cul-de-sac. I'm sure that pile did end up blocking the sidewalk at some point in time. So certainly when we see these situations, we do review with our staff, our snowplow operators, on trying to identify where and what they can push snow, and certainly through periods of time, we do have to make modifications with respect to snow clearing. On the consultation side, certainly when I was preparing this report, we did reach out to Canada Post and had a discussion with Canada Post. And unfortunately, Canada Post was not able to share any information with the town due to privacy information. So we were unaware at the time of writing my report of what the ombudsman situation was, what the ombudsman review had produced. And we were also unaware if these residents had had any communication with Canada Post since 2017. So with that, that is kind of the summary of my report. So the recommendation within the report is to receive the petition and maintain the current community mailbox in its location on Ellis as approved and constructed by Canada Post. With respect to the addendum, agenda that was submitted, certainly there's a submission from Mr. Shanfield and a submission from Mr. Reno. I'll let them both run through their submissions as part of this process. There is one particular item that I would like to draw council's attention to, and through this submission of the supplemental agenda, the delegates did issue the ombudsman report to us, and that is contained on page 17. So certainly I've had an opportunity to review the ombudsman report, and I'd like to draw a number of council's attention to a number of items. Certainly within the executive summary, and that is on page 17, the very first paragraph, which consists of one sentence, it says the suggested location on Serenity Circle does not meet Canada Post requirements in terms of safety. Therefore, your request cannot be supported. Also, as part of the executive summary on the next page, there's two additional items and two additional paragraphs that are referenced. One does reference the Town of LaSalle's previous report of PW 2217. And certainly the other item in that executive summary does reference the commitment from the developer to constructing the sidewalk and installing the permanent location of the mailbox. Certainly, as we flip through the ombudsman report, I draw council's attention to the last page, which is on page 20 in the conclusion of the ombudsman report. The conclusion of the ombudsman report says, our role is to ensure that Canada Post policies and procedures are applied in a fair and consistent manner for all users of Canada Postal Services. The location of this community mailbox site meets Canada Post standards. Therefore, we see no reason to challenge this decision in this case. We are pleased that the developer is in contact with Canada Post in order to finalize the community mailbox. In the conclusion, it makes no reference to the Town of LaSalle's report, and it certainly represents Canada Post's policies. Certainly from the Town of LaSalle standpoint, the location is acceptable to the Town of LaSalle. Canada Post does have to meet their policies for the health and safety of their employees. That is ultimately their decision, as our decision, our requirement for the Town of LaSalle is to make sure our employees have a proper health and safety protocol for when they go and do the work. So certainly those are the policies and procedures of Canada Post, and every indication at this point is that the current location of the community mailbox does meet all of the required policies and procedures from Canada Post and the Town of LaSalle. With that, Mr. Mayor, I am completed with my presentation, and certainly if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, we can hear the delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. If we can ask Mr. Shanfield to commence his 5 minutes, and the clock will start with the clerk once you begin your presentation. Mr. Shanfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Deputy Madam Deputy Mayor, members of council. My name is Stephen Shanfield and I reside at 2103 Serenity Circle. Before I start, I'd like to thank the staff of the clerk's office for their professionalism and their assistance to me in this issue. We talked amongst the residents about making representations here tonight. And rather than having 21 people or some of those 21 people take 5 minutes apiece, I would ask that if I do run over a minute or two, that you grant me that indulgence, especially since Mr. Mara took about 10 to 15 minutes himself. This matter comes before you for the second time, as Mr. Mara indicated, in almost 4 years. And a lot has changed since then, but a lot has remained the same as well. We are appealing to you again to assist us as the council did last time. Aside from the material that I filed, I had intended to put our position totally in words until yesterday when my wife and I took a walk on a beautiful day. But as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I took two pictures at 3:10 p.m. Just a few minutes apart. And I believe that those will speak volumes to those issues. So if you have access to those pictures, I'd like to refer to them. Okay, can you go to the other one first? Okay, this was the first picture that I took. It shows the cul-de-sac roadway looking west from the very end of the cul-de-sac. And I had intended to use this picture to show you the large area where the snow could be moved from the area where the proposed mailboxes would be. But then when I looked at this picture, I realized that there was something even more important. And that is that there's not a single vehicle on the roadway for the entire length of the street from the cul-de-sac right to Ellis Street. And I tell you, as a resident who lives here, that that's the way it is all the time. There is no traffic except for maybe the occasional delivery vehicle, but it's just a sleepy little street. Can we move to the second photo? My wife and I walked down Ellis walked down Serenity to Ellis, turned left and walked to Normandy. And lo and behold, this is what we saw looking north on Ellis from Normandy. And I think that it's no stretch for you to picture the 3,500 vehicles a day that Mr. Tanner advised you this road sees when he appeared before you in October of 2019 in support of the Creekside project. He told you that the capacity of this road is 10 to 12,000 vehicles daily. Now, can you imagine stopping your vehicle in front of the mailbox, which you can see on the right side of this picture, to get out and collect your mail with this kind of traffic volume? Not only is it dangerous for the person getting out of the car to go to the mailbox, but it's dangerous for the passengers who remain in the car in case of an accident. While you've got people trying to pull around you and oncoming traffic as well, it creates a very dangerous situation. If you were going to retrieve your mail, where would you rather retrieve it from? A sleepy cul-de-sac where there's no traffic at all? Or a very busy arterial road like Ellis Street, as we see in this photograph? Canada Post, I would suggest, surely never visited the site to maintain that safety would be more impaired with delivery to Serenity Circle as opposed to Ellis Street. And that brings up a very important point that Mr. Mara alluded to. The municipality is heavily reliant upon Canada Post to approve the location, is heavily relied upon by Canada Post to approve the location of the community mailboxes. I provided you with a policy statement from Canada Post when Hamilton began to install their community mailboxes. And basically, Canada Post said that they were committed to working with municipalities closely in order to find the safest and most convenient location in every neighborhood. And the second area in which Canada Post advises us that they rely on the municipality for the advice is in a series of emails that you have in the material that was provided to you, where Mr. Bruno DeSando of Canada Post writes to Brian Geary and Mr. Mara on July 7th of 2016.
My apologies, Mr. Bondi, Mayor Bondi, but Mr. Shanfield's 5 minutes are up.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Robinson. I'll allow you another minute because we had a little time there, difficulty with the picture. So Mr. Shanfield, if you can sum that up in the next minute, please. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. DeSando said, hey, Brian, can you please tell me who at the municipality approves, quote, approves locations for community mailboxes in new developments? And it was referred to Mr. Mara, who replied to Mr. DeSando, do you see this as an issue for your mail carriers when referring to this boulevard location? So that's the first indication that there's a negative response in relation to this. The seed was planted and the boxes ended up on Ellis Street. What you need to know is that we're informed that Bob Hayes, the previous town engineer, had asked the developer, John Avola, to pour a pad with a wheelchair access at the end of that boulevard. So it was, I believe, and our information is that it was originally intended to go there. So it became apparent that Mr. Mara was going to oppose this. And when we came to council on July 25th of 2017, we asked for support with our application to the ombudsman. You have the report in front of you that Mr. Mara created and that he's repeating again tonight. And when council's approval of the resolution to support our application to the ombudsman was communicated to Canada Post, there was a very brief mention of the resolution, and Mr. Mara's very negative report was sent to Canada Post, which in our view was a communication that this is what was not approved, despite council approving it. So, so when you see the ombudsman's report, the ombudsman makes the comment that this report is council's report, and it's not council's report because council rejected that report. So what the ombudsman believed is that this was the town's intention as expressed in Mr.
My
Mara's
apologies,
report.
Mayor Bondi, but his time is up. He's had 2 minutes now.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, Mr. Shanfield, thank you for your comments, and we'll have to go to Mr. Reno if he can start his presentation.
Might I just say that we're asking for you to amend the town's bylaw because one of the objections Mr. Mara made was that it was illegal to park with the left wheels against the curb. And as I indicated in my written material, that is ambiguous. It's not necessarily so. And we would ask you to amend the bylaw to exempt Canada Post vehicles from that prohibition.
Thank you. Mr. Reno?
Mr. Mayor, again, Mr. Reno has provided written comments, but did not register as a delegate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Because I can't see all 26 on my screen here. Okay. Council's pleasure. Before we do that, Mr. Mara, you're still with us?
Yes, thank you. If council wishes, I can address some of the items within Mr. Shanfield's communication. Otherwise, I leave it to council's discretion on how they wish to proceed forward.
Council, would you like Mr. Mara to address those issues? Yes, I'm seeing a shaking of heads. Yes, please, Mr. Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, Mr. Shanfield did take pictures, and it certainly shows a busy road. I don't think it's any surprise to see at 3 o'clock, 3:10, about 4 o'clock, roads being busy with respect to school being dismissed, and that being one of the main routes to the school. Certainly, that particular road is not an arterial road. That is a collector road. It is capable of handling 3,500 vehicles average annual daily traffic. It currently sees about 450. That is the actual counts of what is on that road. That is current as of 2016. Again, our next round of updates was supposed to be 2020. Obviously, COVID changes the designation and the traffic pattern. So no one has really produced any traffic counts during 2020. And it's still into 2021, where traffic engineers are not producing those types of traffic anomalies and counts. So certainly that is one of the matters. With respect to Bob Hayes, I don't understand that comment. Certainly the 2017 submission never mentioned Mr. Hayes. Mr. Hayes has been the town engineer for a number of years. I worked here in the time when this development came forward, and certainly on the engineering drawings, that was what was approved by Mr. Hayes and myself at the time with respect to this, and certainly we continue to move forward in the aspects of how we deal with developments. With respect to accessibility, certainly within Mr. Renault's submission, you do see the concrete pad that was poured where the proposed mailbox is supposed to go. Certainly that actual approach is accessible, but there is actually no accessible access from the sidewalk down onto the road. None of the driveways are accessible in nature. They have the lip. Wheelchairs cannot navigate over that lip. There is strict requirements with respect to slopes. So certainly the accessibility issue was addressed as part of the development in bringing the sidewalks around the entire development and providing the proper wheelchair accessible locations with respect to getting to the mailbox. Certainly the town promotes and respects active living. Certainly we would hope that people do walk to the mailbox. Again, it looks like it does occur from time to time. Certainly if somebody decides to stop their car on the road and do it, they are doing it knowingly and willingly with respect to being in traffic. Certainly the access to that community mailbox is certainly done with respect in the manner of providing a safe access for pedestrians to walk from their house to the mailbox and back to their house. Certainly the location of the temporary mailbox was closer to Serenity Circle. And when they do temporary locations, they put them in because there is no houses. Certainly that house on the corner probably would have had a concern or issue with respect to that community mailbox being close to their windows. There is policies with respect to that, from that location with respect to being near windows. And certainly that is something that Canada Post has to address as part of their policy. The other matter with respect to Hamilton, certainly Hamilton policy was when they were changing home delivery to community mailbox. It wasn't as part of new developments. Again, that has been paused by Canada Post, but Canada Post was looking at transferring home delivery to community mailbox. And that was a thing that was running through a number of municipalities on where are we now going to put community mailboxes where people used to get home delivery. So certainly that is what is the aspects of with respect to the Hamilton situation with the documents that were submitted. With respect to my communication with the Canada Post, certainly as the professional engineer employed by the town of LaSalle, I do have a responsibility to provide appropriate information to council to make the decisions. Certainly when council is faced with some sort of claim or liability, it does revert back to the department who's responsible for that in carrying that designation. I do have to ensure that I am providing the appropriate responses and direction and advice to council so that we can ensure that both the public and the residents remain safe and council and the town remains liable the least amount of liability towards the town. Certainly, we can't eliminate all of it, but certainly we do our best to ensure that we have paperwork and documentation with respect to the decisions that are made. So certainly, I believe I've addressed a number of the concerns that that were brought forward. And if council wishes, we can probably open it up for discussion now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Mara.
May I just make one correction, please?
I'll allow it, Mr. Shanfield.
Thank you. Mr. Mara is not correct in that there have not been traffic studies done. Mr. Tanner of Dillon Consulting did a traffic study. He reported on it to council, and he said directly in front of all of you councilors in 2019 that the current traffic on that road on Ellis Street is 3,500 vehicles daily, not 450. And there was a traffic study done. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Council, questions? Councilor Akpada, then Councilor Renner.
Looking for some clarification from the CEO, Mr. Mayor, on the responsibility of counts of municipalities when it comes to super mailboxes. Obviously, if the residents have a concern, we want to make sure that we do everything correctly. But that also means, as Mr. Mara has indicated, accessibility, public access, snow clearing, and safety for not only the residents picking up their mail, but also for Canada Post. So I guess I'm sort of looking to the CAO for some insight on positioning, liability, and the relationship that, from his perspective, that municipalities have with Canada Post as it relates to the positioning of super mailbox within the confines of the points that I brought up, Your Worship.
Mr. Militia.
Again, I'll try to offer some comments, but again, they will be relatively brief. I will say that that again, the relationship between Canada Post with respect to where super mailboxes are located is one of a collaborative nature when developments happen. So again, most of that is at the development stage, and that's handled by our development group, which is headed up by Mr. Mara. So again, it seems to be clear from the correspondence through the ombudsman that the Canada Post preferred location is not is where it's at, and not where the residents are suggesting. So again, it's clear from that correspondence as to what their preference is, and they do go into further detail as to what the council report is and the report that was presented to council. But there as Mr. Mara has indicated, again, it's a quite simple first line paragraph that indicates that the mailbox cannot and will not be moved. So from that perspective, that's what I can offer. I would turn back to Mr. Mara, who would be able to offer more particulars about how that process works.
Mr. Mara.
Certainly, yeah, during the development stage, we do work with Canada Post. It's part of the engineering and developers' responsibility to make contact with Canada Post. And they do put forward preferred locations. In almost all locations, we try to pick side yards because they are the least intrusive to the neighborhood. Again, no one wants to look out their front window and see a community mailbox in their front yard. So certainly we pick side yards. This location, again, there is a location on Laurier. If council ever takes an opportunity to take a look at Laurier, there is one on Laurier just east of Disputed. That was put in at the side yards of those lots when they were created fronting on Disputed because there was no other location. Certainly, Laurier is an arterial road. There is a shoulder there, so there is opportunity. But as Laurier becomes 4 lanes, there will not be an opportunity to pull over. So Canada Post will have to work with a number of those residents in looking at trying to find an opportunity to relocate that, or they will leave it the same and they will have to find alternative means for delivery. But certainly we do work with Canada Post in picking locations with respect to the development stage, so that it is on the drawings, so that it is as much as public as we can. It does reference the community mailbox within the agreements as well. It doesn't say the specific location, and I don't recall whether there was any schedules with respect to this particular subdivision agreement that showed the community mailbox, but certainly things that we have learned going forward is that's what we try now to put in the agreements and register on title, so that those things become publicly available and registered on title on what locations are chosen for community mailbox at the development stage.
Mr. Akpata, does that satisfy your question?
Yes, from both gentlemen. Thank you, Your Worship.
Now we go to Councillor Renaud.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, I don't think there's any argument as to the drawings that were submitted back in the planning stage and what's on title and things like that. But I will say that as we all see our town center growing, as it has been growing for the last 20 years, and most in particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, we see a lot of development back in that area. We see the expansion of our home hardware and soon another 2 projects coming around that corner. I do still stand with the original resolution of trying to move them. However, you know, I do understand that the snow plowing and things like that are problematic, but I think the most important thing here is the safety of everyone. And my question to Mr. Mara, obviously everything between the sidewalk and the road surface lip of the road is our property. Would it be possible to cut a layway, or I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong term, but cut in a lane for safe access to that mailbox? Because I mean, I see somebody coming around that corner. I see a bus in the way. I see a lot of things in my head. And I think the potential down the road for loss, whether it be vehicular or life, is there. I think that is a reasonable expectation. And I'm just wondering what would be involved in doing that? Could we cut in a layway there to help ease the safety concern?
Mr. Mara?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, certainly there is an opportunity if council wishes to construct a lay-by at that location. That would be in the range of about $30,000 to $35,000 to do so. All the trees that have been planted need to be removed. The sidewalk needs to be rerouted. There are a number of utilities that will probably, again, I can't recall whether there is any hydro poles or streetlights. I don't think there are on that side of the road. So certainly sidewalk has to be redone, drainage and things of that nature have to be looked. It will push the mailbox closer to the fence. It will probably be right up against the fence in that instance, because we have to make room for the lane, plus we have to make room for the sidewalk on the back of the curb, because it's on the back of a curb, it has to be a wider sidewalk. So it will push everything a little bit more easterly and probably right up against that fence. So certainly that is an option if council so wishes to do that. But certainly it's not in any of our budgets at this point in time, but certainly council can provide that direction.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. You want to add to that, Mr. Militia?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you for the opportunity. Again, I would just caution council in making those types of decisions, because we will be confronted with those types of requests once we start. And so we can expect that other community mailboxes will come forward and ask for the same indulgence and the same adjustments as we go forward. So as much as this particular one may be a $30,000 or $40,000 cost to do that, which perhaps is feasible at this point in time, again, we can expect more and more of these come forward from other areas in the municipality where perhaps, you know, whether the lane is not large enough or we'd have to do things of that nature. So it becomes more of a policy decision as we start to exempt this particular location and what we will see come across in other locations across the town. So again, just a word of caution that we may be setting a precedent when we talk about that type of situation.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Mr. Renaud, did that answer your question?
It did answer my question. Thank you.
Any other questions from Deputy Mayor Malash?
Thank you. Through you to maybe Mr. Militia, just to follow up on that. If we were to just request a report to see really what it would entail to create something like that, because I honestly believe at this point in time, everything we've been through, it's kind of done with Canada Post. It is their decision, it's their choice, and that's kind of where we're at with it. So I'm thinking, what other options do we have? If we just request a report to see the costs, to see what's involved, is that setting a precedent just to review it, not necessarily approving it, but just to review to see what that would entail?
Is that to Mr. Militia? Okay.
I think so.
Again, we can come back with a report on what the cost would be to move this one and take a look at what's across the municipality. That wouldn't bind anything for council. I will say though, again, just as a word of caution again, is that, you know, every time we do this, we keep raising expectations in terms of what we can or can't do, what we will and will not do. So from that perspective, it's just a matter of managing those expectations. But if council directs administration to prepare a report based on what options are available, we certainly will be able to.
Mr. Maher, did you want to add anything? No? Okay. Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Akpata.
Through your worship to probably Mr. Mara, based on what my friend Mr. Reno has said, what would Canada Post be able to do should we proceed with Mr. Reno's suggestion? Do they have say on where the post office or where the post box would be? Would they have to be consulted? Would they have final right of refusal? I just want to make sure that anything that we do, as Mr. Militia has said, is level set with the federal agency, that if we go through all of this, could they simply say, no, we're not moving the mailbox, because you spoke about moving the mailbox further away and closer to the fence. So I just want to make sure that, you know, Canada Post doesn't say, Tana LaSalle, you're stepping outside of the boundaries of where you're able to go, whether we want to discuss and take a look at what we're trying to do to help the residents or not.
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. The generalized location doesn't change. It is just providing that lay-by lane, which would change. Certainly, all the costs associated with that would be borne by the town. So we would have to go through that. I would have to circle back with Canada Post to see that. So if council wishes to have a report, I got to circle back and see what this particular one means. Certainly, that is something that we would have to circle back with them on. I don't think there would be a big change from their aspect with respect to this, because it still meets all the intent of their policies relative to being near people, windows, properties, houses, things of that nature, still in safe walking distance and things of that nature. So certainly that is a possibility. But as Mr. Militia had mentioned, there is a whole host of these throughout the municipality on a number of busy streets and a number of streets that have bicycle lanes, and certainly asphalt trails where we just don't have enough room to do it. This particular location, we probably have room, but some other locations we just can't do it. There's not enough room to do that. So certainly there will be potentially winners and losers in this aspect, and council just has to be aware that we will be maybe having to let people know if other things come forward and other requests come forward, that we just can't entertain those. So certainly we can certainly review that as part of a formal report if council so wishes.
I see your hand up, Councillor Desjardins, but we'll go to our solicitor first, and then I'll come back to you. Mr. Dedal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to jump in because it kind of piggybacks off of Councillor Akpata's question here. And in terms of our current agreements, and this is through all of our development agreements, the initial clause is that Canada Post they're the ones that they determine with the owners where the arrangements are for the location. So in terms of where things move, yes, there is communication back and forth, but they certainly carry the ball in that respect. So I just thought I would add that in terms of our agreements, and I don't have that specific one in front of me, but given the age of it, I'm going to assume there's not going to be a drastic change from the ones that I'm looking at right now that I've drafted, where community mailboxes are determined by Canada Post, and yes, in consult with us, but they have the final say in terms of the way that we draft our agreements with them.
Thank you, Solicitor Adult. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through you, I think Mr. Dudal just answered the question that I wanted to know about going forward with developers agreements and locations. And one other thing, I don't know who this would go to, whether it would be Mr. Marr, Mr. Militia, or maybe Mr. Dudal. If, God forbid, something happened, someone stopped at the mailbox, opens their car door, gets out, car door gets hit, person gets hit, something happens. Whose liability is that? Is that us or is that Canada Post?
Who wants to take that one? Mr. Mara.
First and foremost, I think the Highway Traffic Act would prevail, that the officers would have to make a notion of whether it was done properly and safely. I wouldn't be able to answer that truly effectively without knowing a particular situation. Certainly the signs on the road are posted, no parking, no standing, no stopping. It is in our bylaw that way. So certainly people who do so do it at their own risk. So we have a number of things in place that will prevent that. It does have the clause within the bylaw that it allows people to stop or delivery services to stop for a short period of time to get in and out. So certainly it is the responsibility of that person who is on the road to ensure that they're following the proper rules of the road, that they are getting out at a proper time and getting in at a proper time and things of that nature. So certainly it does become a bit of a clouded situation, but certainly there are the rules of the road that would have to be followed with respect to that. And I don't know if Mr. Dudalt has anything further to add.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question. Oh, okay. I'll save myself for last. Councillor Reno, then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Your Worship. I hope this doesn't change anything that you're going to say. But I, at this point, am concerned about the safety of the people on that road with the buses. I understand that we could be setting a precedent. However, I would like a report to be drawn up that examines layaways or laybys on bus routes in LaSalle and the cost of moving this particular or installing one at this particular location on this particular bus route. As I feel that there's a safety issue. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I have a community mailbox about seven houses from my house. And I'm ashamed to say that I drive to it pretty well every day. I don't walk to it. And that's sad. And I will say the accessibility work that's been done on Serenity Circle and that surrounding area is top of the line. I mean, they've done a great job with those sidewalks and all the curbs and all that stuff as I've been down there to visit. But the fact of the matter is people want to drive up and pick up their mail. And I think the only way of doing that is to have a lay-by in this particular area. So I would like to make a motion that we receive the report and that we send it back to administration to give us a cost of installing a lay-by on this particular bus route.
Okay, we have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Akpata. On the motion for discussion, Deputy Mayor Malash. Sorry, Councillor Akpata, did you want to speak on the motion?
Yes, Your Worship. I'd like to propose to my friend, Mr. Reno, a friendly amendment that whatever report is drafted also goes to Canada Post, because Mr. Dudalt has made it clear, and I just want to make sure that I understand that we could try everything that's possible. Canada Post may reject any movement of the mailbox regardless of what we propose, and therefore the report may be moot. So I want to make sure that Canada Post is included in the discussions, so that they understand how Mr. Reno, Councillor Reno, articulated his concerns for the safety of these residents.
Point taken. On the motion, Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. I guess to add to it, I'd be interested in how many other areas in our town have a similar style mailbox. to see what type of situation we're actually getting ourselves into here. Also, and I know this may be way out there and I may be thinking crazy. And when we do certain things in areas where it's going to improve the property for residents, we can charge back to taxes to do those developments or upgrades. If a development came to us and requested something like this, where it's a $30,000+ job so that they could get what they're looking for, is that something that could be divided between the residents to cover the cost of that? Since it could be through multiple areas throughout our town. I don't know if that's an option, but.
Mr. Mara.
Just on the question regarding the locations, certainly the bus route does have an impact on a number of locations. So Heritage Drive has a number of these. So there's a whole host of locations along Heritage Drive. International and up to Michigan, a lot of them are on Michigan because those are the side yards. So there's a whole host of them along Michigan that have to be dealt with. And I'm just going off of memory, trying to replay the bus route in my head here, but certainly there are a number of locations that will be affected with respect to looking at community mailboxes on the actual physical bus route that we have running through the town. So certainly those would be problematic. And I see Mr. Langlois has come on. He may be able to speak to the matter of local improvement versus items to charge back to residents.
Mr. Langlois.
Yes. In regards to the question, if we can charge back to specific areas, there is two ways you can do it. One's through a local improvement charge, and another is through Part 12 of the Municipal Act. There's actually one of our goals for this year is to complete a policy on this and bring it forward to council. But basically how it'll work, and it's not only for mailboxes, it could be for sidewalks or filling in drains with storm sewers. If there is a percentage of the property owners along a particular road or area that vote in favor of that, there is the possibility to keep track of all the costs involved, complete the project, and then allocate it to the affected property owners based on either road frontage or number of houses based on a weighted average. So that could potentially be a solution. We're still investigating which type of projects we can charge under Part 12 of the Development Charge Act, but this may be one that qualifies.
Thank you. Follow-up, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Actually, that answered my questions perfectly, because my biggest concern is I know driving around the town, there's multiple areas that have these style mailboxes, and I don't want it to look like we're giving a special situation to this one area when Heritage is a very busy road, Laurier is a very busy road. We have areas that are concerned that, like Mr. Militia said, are going to also come forward and want the same type of treatment. So if we are to request this report, I would like the report to include something, as Mr. Langlois was stating, about possibly, part or entire fees being charged back to the residents who want these large improvements to the area.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. I have a couple questions to Mr. Shanfield. You've done a lot of work on this. The report is well detailed. I have a question. Since this ombudsman report done in his letter is dated, or her letter, I didn't see the signature, August 30th, 2017. Did you push it up the chain of command at Canada Post?
Well, I can tell you that I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister.
Okay.
The Prime Minister referred it to Canada Post, and Canada Post basically said they're not doing anything, but I don't know how significant their review was. I don't know whether they were in possession at that time of council's resolution from back in 2017. It was basically just no.
Okay, thank you for that, your honesty there. Mr. Mara, we talk about liability, and my field of my other job, we deal with that every day. And all your decisions and your recommendations to council are to the best of your knowledge and your designation to protect the municipality against any claims, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm not sure how to say this, but we seem to be getting a lot of, oh, one other question. Sorry, Mr. Militia, or Mr. Mara. In the documentation, we have that approval from Dillon Consulting, or this, I'm not sure what you call this, draft plan of subdivision, and it shows the location of the mailbox. So when Mr. Evola built the subdivision, residents would have been informed where the mailbox was going. Is that correct?
That plan that you see is part of the engineering drawings. In terms of what the developer and or builders pass on to the homeowners and what information is passed on, that is something that we are unclear of how and what gets passed on. We definitely hope information like this gets passed on. Again, we've had a number of instances through council where people don't understand where sidewalks and trails are going in front of their houses, and it's well documented, and we still deal with those types of things. But certainly it's unclear of what the developers and what the builders are passing on to the ultimate purchaser, who's going to be there for a number of years after the developer goes. So certainly, I don't know, I can't really give you an answer. Some developers are really good at it, some builders are really good at it, and some are really lousy at it as well. So certainly, it's a mixed bag of what kind of reactions we get with respect to that. And I see Mr. Dadalt has come on. He may be able to add a bit further context to that.
Mr. Dadalt.
Your worship, just to point out, there's a bolded clause at the bottom of the community mailbox portion of our agreements that does state that it's the obligation of the owners, which is the developers in this case, to inform prospective purchasers of lots within this development the location of any community mailbox adjacent to or lying within the development. So the obligation onus is on the developer from the get-go, whether or not, as Mr. Marr stated here, whether or not they do or don't. We may not be able to follow up on that, but in terms of the obligation, it's in black and white and bolded in this instance. So it is in the agreement and covered in that respect.
I don't usually do this, Mr. Shanfield, but go ahead.
Since I'm one of the buyers, I can tell you what we were told. There were restrictions that were attached to our agreement of purchase and sale that let us know that, for example, we couldn't, build a fence of a certain material. We couldn't take down trees without permission, et cetera, et cetera. There was nothing to do with the mailbox, but I can tell you that Mr. Evola told us that he had been instructed to pour the cement pad on the boulevard for the placement of the community mailbox. And other people can vouch for that as well, that was what we were told was going to be the place where the mailboxes were going to be.
Thank you for your comments. I'm one of these people that I like what's in writing. I deal with people, I trust most of them, but I like to see something in writing. What's bothersome to me is this is now the third group of residents that have come to council because developers, builders, homeowners in some cases aren't doing what they're supposed to do. Then they come to us to fix their problem. And I don't think that's what we're here for. We have an obligation to represent everyone, and we give you the opportunity, Mr. Shanfield and Mr. Reno, and if you're representing the others, to come to us with your issue. My concern simply is, I'm pro-development. I'm pushing development. You can ask anybody in administration, you can talk to developers. I'm always pushing development. But I'm also pushing them to do the right thing and give the information to the prospective homeowners, the builders, whoever is, it's their obligation to transfer this information. What I don't like is we're not the clearing agency here for whether it's a fence, whether it's a sidewalk, whether it's a mailbox. And you yourself said you wrote a letter to the Prime Minister. Whether it was reviewed or not, obviously it got the attention to be reviewed. And I'm in no way, shape, or form ready to move a resolution in any way to go against this. And I mean, you look at page 17, the top line says, we're not moving it. In all due respect to the councilors who made this report, Our people are busy enough doing what they have to do to promote development, not to go back after everybody's development and go, you didn't do this, you should have did this. That's my 2 cents worth on this. I don't like, it's not that I don't understand your concern, Mr. Shanfield. Like Mr. Reynolds said, he drives 7 houses down to get his mail. I just built a house. I know where my mailbox is or where I'm going to put it. I did my homework and I'm expecting everyone else to do it. I don't want to be responsible, and I don't want the 7 counselors who are with us to make these decisions on moving mailboxes or sidewalks or trails or whatever comes up next. So with all due respect, I will be voting against this motion. I don't want to send it anywhere. This is 3 years old. We dealt with it. It came back. It went to the Prime Minister, and now we want to write it and get a report. I can't support that. So just before we vote on the motion, I thought I'd be clear on where I stand on this. So if there's any other comments on the motion? Seeing none, on the motion moved by Councillor Reno and seconded by Councillor Akpata. Mr. Reno, did you have something to say? Okay, so on the motion, in favor of the motion, Councillor Reno, Councillor Akpata. Opposed? Deputy Mayor Meloche, Councillor Desjardins, Councillor Licho Spagnolo, and myself. The motion fails. Thank you, Mr. Shanfield, for your presentation. Reports and correspondence for council action. 2021 Bridge Needs Study, item E1. I believe that is Mr. Osborne. Is he what? There he is. Jonathan, is there anything you want to add to the your report? I can't hear you, Jonathan. It doesn't show.
All right, is that better?
There we go.
Okay. Nothing too much to add. It's a short report, but typically this would be in the budget session, but it was missed at that time. So we're just now asking for council's approval to move ahead with this report.
Council's pleasure. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through you. Quick question, Jonathan, how many bridges are we talking about?
I think it's in the neighborhood of 25, something to that effect, bridges and culverts.
Oh, bridges and culverts. Okay, yep. Thank you.
Any other council questions? Councillor Reno.
No question. It's due diligence. I'll move the motion to approve.
Moved by Councillor Reno, seconded by Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Item E2, holiday light display at the Cenotaph. Mr. Beggs, you've got the fun stuff.
Mayor and members of council, yes, we have a little bit more festive report to go through here. So just a couple comments, just to go through the report. This report is in addition to Mr. Militia's update at the last council meeting regarding the holiday light display plan for the town hall park location. And as previously noted, we did have some items that we're looking at getting that were available with a 20% discount that we went ahead and already ordered. And that's a total of about $66,000 worth of decorations. And we got about a $15,000 discount for ordering those early. So just to clarify, that is already ordered and on its way, and we got the discounts already for those items. The remainder of items that are represented in this report include some of the custom items that we're looking at getting. The boat with the waves, the police car, the fire truck, the wreath with the scrolls. And then the big item that we're here tonight to go through is kind of the centerpiece of the display, which is a 40-foot high walk-through tree that is fully lit, and then it also has another 4-foot. They call it a tree topper, which is it's kind of like a star that goes on top. And I just wanted to kind of clarify what that is exactly, just so everyone is understanding exactly what we're looking at. So in the report, there is a picture of the tree, and you can see how you can actually walk right through the tree, and it's all lit on the inside of the sort of the tunnel. And then obviously the tree itself is lit too. So this tree is, it's a big tree. It's a 40-foot tree. It's set up in big sections. You have to weight it down with sandbags, and then it's all pre-lit, and you have to put all the branches on. But just to be clear about it, this is not a tree that has any kind of programmable lighting. So something like you might see in the City of Windsor display with the lights kind of going up and down the tree and different things like that. This tree is completely lit, and it has, I forget the number, but something like 35,000 lights. So it's got lots of lights on it, but they are basically just white lights. Subsequent to the report, we did get a hold of our supplier, and there might be an option to mix in some blue lighting with the white, but again, it wouldn't change color or anything. It would just sort of add to it. In addition to that, what I was thinking about doing is getting all the decorations ordered. Sorry, and I think we're going to have a little bit of money left over, and we might be able to still put some additional decorations on the tree. Which the tree looks great on its own, but there are some things that if we can this year, or maybe even in subsequent years, add, like in the picture, it shows those snowflakes that are on the tree. So we might be able to add some things like that, just depending on money. This stuff is all extremely expensive. Just sort of to put in perspective, if we want to put just like Christmas balls on the 40-foot tree, we're looking at around $50,000 worth of decorations. So it's all quite expensive. So also with the report, I just wanted to note that we didn't include any information on when the display would open, or if there were any other programming events or vendors or those kind of things that would be associated with it. And in some conversation with Culture and Recreation today, what we'll probably do is bring a subsequent report forward with a bit more detail on that kind of thing. So this report just represents buying the actual decorations and getting that order in so that we can get all the stuff for Christmas. If there's any questions, I'm available.
Council's pleasure. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. I'd actually like to move the recommendation.
Seconded by Councilor Edicio Spagnolo. All in favor? That carries. Opposed? Councilor Akpada. Item E3. Mr. Longwas, Town Hall Workstation and Office Expansion.
Your worship, members of council, the construction of the current Town Hall building was completed in 2014. Since that time, many new services have been rolled out. There's been many legislative changes, and the town's grown significantly. As such, the town has hired many new positions, and we're now close to reaching the capacity of the number of office spaces and workstations that are currently available at our Town Hall building. Rather than construct an addition onto the existing Town Hall building, which would cost multiple millions of dollars, Mr. Militia and Mr. Mara came up with a design to convert the upstairs Laurier conference room into 3 office spaces and reconstruct a new conference room within the staff lunchroom area. The current lunchroom is not often utilized to its capacity unless there's a staff event, such as a retirement lunch, which doesn't occur very often. The new design will allow the proposed conference room to open up into the lunchroom for these types of events in the future, so it will not limit the current lunchroom in any way. The estimated total cost to complete this portion of the project is $110,000. In addition to the new office creations, this report proposes adding 2 additional workstations in the main workstation area downstairs, located behind the customer service desk, and also adding an additional workstation where the executive assistant to the CAO and the executive assistant to the clerk are currently located. To accomplish this, the new executive assistant workstations will be used to create the new workstations in the main area behind the council service representatives. All the workstations will be approximately the same size as the current workstations, and all accessibility standards will be met. The width of the hallways beside the copy room and the file room downstairs will be slightly reduced to accommodate the 2 additional workstations. And the width of these hallways will now match the other hallways downstairs, which are approximately 50 inches wide. The total cost of this portion of the project is $17,600. In the future, once all this construction's been completed, we'll look at some new layouts upstairs that could potentially create some additional workstations upstairs as well. These additional offices and workstations will be sufficient to cover the town's projected growth for at least the next 10 years moving forward. I'm happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Councillor Akpata.
Through you to Mr. Langlois. Mr. Langlois, if we didn't do this, what would be the outcome for the folks that need these workstations, sir?
Well, if we didn't do this, we'd probably have to get a little bit creative. I think we might have 1 workstation left downstairs and one office currently, actually it's currently being utilized by some of our culture and rec staff right now. But once we get back to normal operations, it'd probably be more of a rotating, maybe a work from home schedule and sharing of offices, because we're at that point where we're reaching our capacity.
And a supplemental, your worship?
Yes.
And you said that the changes that you're doing will ensure appropriate office space and working spots for the people to support the municipality until a projected time period, sir?
Yeah, for at least the next 10 years based on our staffing projections. Mr. Militia has a question.
Mr. Militia.
If I can maybe add a little bit of context with respect to the future staffing additions. Again, a lot of that's going to depend on kind of the service levels that we provide as well as the growth levels. I think perhaps this renovation with a 10-year time span would be a bit ambitious without some other ancillary changes that would happen in terms of our operating model. I will say that, COVID has provided a lot of opportunities for us, a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities, and opened our eyes in a lot of ways. And this small renovation that we're doing will likely set up the municipality, I think, for the next 3 to 5 years on a physical basis. However, I think going forward beyond this renovation, we are likely going to look at more significant internal or adding on or external renovations or add-ons to the building, which is something at this point, now that COVID has opened our eyes a bit to how alternative work locations can work, we certainly are more open to. And so I think that while this will service kind of the short to midterm needs, we are looking at different operating models so that whether it's a job sharing or space sharing, desk sharing, office sharing, hoteling, whatever you want to call it, in terms of better utilizing our space on a more consistent basis without having to expand the building to any great degree. So that's really what our long-term focus is. It's really going to take us a bit of time to work through some of those situations, and we're looking towards 2021 to sort of solidify those a little more and try to understand how post-COVID we can take some of our lessons learned during COVID and make them work for us. So that is kind of the plan going forward. But I think that the renovation that's before you today, along with some minor renovations that we may have planned for some of the workstations in the upcoming 12 months, would probably suffice us for that 3 to 5 year time period.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Councillor Akpata, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir, it does. Thank you, Mr. Langlois. It was a well-written report.
Councillor Idicio Spagnolo.
I just wanted to support the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Idicio Spagnolo, supported by Councillor Akpata. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Langlois, you're up again. 2020 Development Charges Treasurer's Statement.
Your Worship, members of council, this Development Charges Treasurer Statement is a report that's required under the Development Charges Act. It outlines the development charges and cash in lieu of parkland that we've collected throughout the year, and which projects that we've used development charges and the in lieu payments to fund. In 2020, approximately $2.5 million of development charges were collected, and $3.3 million of expenses were funded from development charges. It's important to note that the projects that were funded occurred over the past 5 years since the previous development charge bylaw was passed. So from 2016 to 2019, the only expenses that would have been funded from the development charges were the Lou Romano sewage capacity debt payments. Moving forward, the report will be brought before council annually and will fund the eligible expenses from development charges on an annual basis. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Council's pleasure. Councilor Desjardins.
Support the motion.
Support, moved by Councilor Desjardins, seconded by Deputy Mayor Meloche. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Item 5. Mr. Langlois, you're still there. Schedule of council remuneration.
Your worship, members of council, this is another report that's required by the Municipal Act annually, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Council's pleasure. Moved by Deputy Mayor Meloche. Seconded by Councilor Desjardins. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Langlois. Item F1, Parks and Rec Events Committee meeting February 18th. Councilor Akpata.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you can see, Ms. Finero and her staff again outlined a number of virtual events, some simple changes to how the Volmer is going to be when we reopen. And we are anticipating hopefully that the current status of the Volmer will change as we start to move forward and get and normalize, but it's not my place to say that. We're just hopeful and looking forward towards that. And with that, the minutes are before you. And Ms. Finero, if I've missed anything or there's anything that you believe that's important to be added for council and for the public to understand, please feel free to add anything. I think the minutes are pretty self-explanatory, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor Akpata. Ms. Finero?
I have nothing further to add, but I'm available should there be any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Akpata, while you were making your comments, the CAO, Mr. Militia, was shaking his head. Yes, we're reopening and we'll see what we can do as fast as we can do. So, council's pleasure. Moved by Deputy Mayor Meloche, seconded by Councilor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Councilor Desjardins on the LaSalle Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting February 24th.
Yes, thank you. It was an accessibility meeting to discuss the Small Coast Waterfront project. Most of the comments were good, which is encouraging. There were some comments about the beach access and access to the skating area for people with physical challenges, and that's going to be addressed by the designers and by Mr. Miller. They're coming back to us. We are having another meeting towards the end of the month to discuss some questions that were asked. And other than that, it went well. Ms. Jean did give us a report on the what's called web surround to make sure that our website is as up to date and as user friendly as possible. I think it's called web scan. I've lost the phraseology, sorry. But it's just a matter of making sure that we're in the right place at the right time and that it's user friendly for any one of our residents that might need to use the website in a different format. So that's about it. Any questions?
Thank you, Councilor Desjardins. Mover on the motion, Councilor Iudicio Spagnolo, seconded by Councilor Akpata. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Information items to be received. Virtual services provided by the town of LaSalle. Mr. Langlois.
Your worship, members of council. In addition to council's request to provide a report on the ability to access tax billing information online, this report also identifies several other virtual services or electronic initiatives that have been rolled out recently or are planned to roll out in the near future. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a horrendous disease and has temporarily reduced or limited many of the physical services that the town normally provides to our residents, specifically programming and event-related activities. However, this, trying to think with the glass half full, this has given administration the capacity to work on many other virtual services and initiatives that both directly or indirectly affect our taxpayers. They're listed throughout the report. In addition to the virtual customer services that have been rolled out, are in the process of being rolled out or will be rolled out in the near future, there are many additional internal electronic processes that have been rolled out or are planned to roll out in the near future. Although these processes are behind the scenes and don't directly provide a service to the public, it's important to mention them as they automate processes and create efficiencies, which save costs, staff time, and eliminates the potential for error. As a result, staff can be utilized to work on or accomplish other tasks or services. The best example that I can give for this is the Kronos time attendance software, which went live at the beginning of 2020. Previously, scheduling, vacation, and other types of leave tracking were not automated. It wasn't an automated process and required a lot of staff time. There were several reviews along the way to ensure that there were no errors made. It all took a lot of time each week by a lot of different people. So with the new software, these processes are automated and need to be only reviewed by the direct supervisor. There's no room for manual input error as everything's automatically scanned in. This has resulted in hours of saved time each week, which staff can now utilize to focus on their other tasks. For example, one of our positions that used to review all the part-time staff sheets now has the capacity to work on the tangible capital assets that are included in our software and making sure that they're all up to date, all the information is current, up to date, and that ultimately flows into our asset management plan. At one point, we're beginning to look at potentially a new position or a partial new position that could accomplish this task, but with these efficiencies gained, we're now able to accomplish this with internal resources. There are many other examples like this. I'm not going to mention them all, but this is one big example of where electronic processes can create such efficiencies that ultimately save our taxpayers and ratepayers money over time. So should there be any questions on the services mentioned in the report, I'd be happy to answer them, or the department on which they fall under would be able to answer as well.
Councillor Renaud.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to give my thanks. I was just hoping that we might have a couple little electronic tweaks here and there to help us along the way. I had no idea the amount of automation and the amount of electronic work that we have been doing and what's been done by the town so far. So I want to thank Dale for a very detailed report, and I'm sure it'll be appreciated by many people in the town, as many people are looking to do more and more on their handheld devices. So great initiatives, great programming down at the Volmer coming. Thank you very much, Dale.
Well, it's all the departments that have, I wrote the report, but in consultation with all the departments. So all the departments have been rolling out all these different initiatives.
I appreciate that, Dale, but not all of them grew a beard for us for tonight.
And Mr. Militia.
Thank you, Councillor Renaud. Well, I just would like to expand a bit on Mr. Langlois' comments, and really look to thank certainly our departmental leaders for pushing forward with more and more virtualization and digitization of services as we look to gain efficiencies in our operations through the use of technology. I'd also, it'd be remiss if we didn't mention again the technology group that we have. It's a small, but I would say powerful group that we've really empowered in doing a lot of the heavy lifting in concert with our department heads. Certainly Mr. DJ Zhu, who's our manager of technology, who reports up through finance to Mr. Langlois. It's certainly, we've really pushed the envelope, and we really, again, for municipalities that tend to be like big tankers in the ocean where it's hard to turn and hard to hard to move, but we certainly get where we're going. We certainly have made a lot of progress kind of pre-COVID as well as throughout COVID and rolling out a lot of these technology, some of it by design and some of it by default that we've had to. But certainly him and his, certainly Mr. DJSU and his group have been instrumental in moving us forward in that regard. So they've been very supportive of departmental initiatives. You see that there's a number of them and they touch almost every area, whether they be in public works, whether they be in council services or in recreation, or in the planning and building area. I mean, we've really made a lot of strides forward in the recent past here. And again, we look forward to doing more of this because we know it is what we have to do. Again, one of those lessons learned coming out of COVID is that we have learned to embrace the technology more and more and learn to go and use it more to our advantage. So, you know, there's more to do, but we certainly come a long way in the last 2 years or so.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Militia. We do have a small team of 3, but they work like a team of 20. And there is 21 upgrades or changes or new software enhancements you've provided, Mr. Longo. So cheers to you and your group. And obviously, it all comes under Mr. Militia at one point or another. And council's pleasure. Mr. Reno, move the recommendation. Yep. Supported by Councilor Desjardins, or did you have a question? Just a second. Okay. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Longo. Okay. Future federal stimulus funding. Did I miss something? No. Council's pleasure. Deputy Mayor Malash. Move the recommendation. Okay. Support by Councilor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Sorry about my delayed reaction there. Fire Service 2020 Annual Report. Chief Sutton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council. The 2020 annual report basically
Fire Service didn't pay their internet bill.
Like every other facet of life, we were very much occupied with adapting to the pandemic and the requirements for that. However, we were able to a number of other things outside of the pandemic as well. Our overall volume through the year was down slightly, I think in large part due to the majority of individuals being at home more. But the trends for calls for service remain relatively stable, nothing of note in that regard. As we heard in the previous report on technology and virtual services, we were able to creatively pivot the majority of our public education activity so that we could on that very important aspect. Although the building was closed to public traffic in person, the staff really pivoted well and very eagerly took on the role of public education. They produced a series of short videos, and through our administrative assistant and the deputy chief and our team really upped our efforts in social media posts, public education that way. So we were able to adapt in the circumstances. Primary rescue engine, which was a little bit challenging with the restrictions of actually getting the truck built and doing the inspections, but we were able to carry that project through, as well as replacing, with council's support on both of these, replacing our breathing air supply, our air packs that supply the breathing air Under the health and safety recommendations, there's an annual or a regular schedule that is recommended for replacement of those. So that was another fairly extensive project that we were able to complete through the year as well. And on the personnel side, we were able to continue with the implementation of the master plan recommendations, including the first phase of the increase in full-time staffing to benefit our initial response capabilities. And although challenging, we were also able to run a recruitment process and were able to complete that process and have those new individuals on board. And the other note administratively, we continued to devote efforts to the succession planning to prepare for our upcoming transition in leadership. So with all that, I'm confident that with the new leadership and the direction from the master plan recommendations that the department is well positioned to continue to provide the important service to the community and meet the future challenges. So those are my comments, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Mr. Reno, as chair of the fire committee, any comments?
I don't have any further comments. I mean, we've already taken a peek at this, and you know, we've been fortunate with the fire committee to be able to follow this journey, you know, through the master plan process and to see it all starting to come together. I know there's lots of pieces to come together, but knowing that our team's been on top of it has been a great feeling, and it's nice to see. So thank you, Chief, and we'll make sure that the new guys do you proud.
Council's pleasure. Councillor Desjardins and Councillor Riccio Spagnolo moving the motion, or motion to receive. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. Good report. Probably your last one. Summary of reports to council. Moved by Deputy Mayor Malash, support by Councillor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Bylaws, only two today on all three readings. Councillor Reno and Councillor Riccio Spagnolo, all in favor. That carries. Thank you. Council questions. Councillor Akpata, then Councillor Desjardins.
Through your worship to Mr. Solani. Mr. Solani, a while ago, we had started to go down the path of looking at another municipality for reference for urban farming or for keeping of livestock or whatever the term may be. And I had a couple of members of the community reach out to me that are just wondering where we stand on that. And I know that we were looking to another municipality to finish their review so that we could go forward. Any insights, sir, on where we are or where that may be landing?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Akpata. In September of 2020, a staff report was prepared and brought forward to the bylaw committee that presented information with respect to an option going forward for licensing for urban hens. That report was received well by the committee, and the recommendation was for staff to monitor the pilot project. So there is a pilot project that's being undertaken as we speak in a neighboring municipality, and we are going to monitor, and our staff are continuing to follow that to see how well it goes and what some of the issues are coming out of that particular pilot project. We've committed, and the resolution of the bylaw committee in September is that staff will prepare a report. A subsequent report will come back to the committee this fall with a recommendation with respect to what the town of LaSalle should do with respect to that particular issue.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other council questions? Sorry, Councilor Desjardins, then Councilor Reynolds.
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Finero. March 1st, we started a new program for registering residents for different options at the Vollmer, and I just wondered how it had gone. If we've had any concerns brought forward, and if we're moving forward well with it.
Thank you for the question. So far, things are moving forward in a positive manner. We have just started registration this week for exercise blocks with the fitness center opening. So that just started on Monday. However, we have been using the software to book our ICE users in, and the staff, of course, have been using it for the last month or so, doing staff training and getting things set up. And the feedback has been very positive from the staff. And everybody is very pleased with the efficiencies that the software is creating.
Thank you, Ms. Finero. Councilor Reynolds.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is for Mr. Militia. You may find this hard to believe, being 60 degrees out tomorrow, that I've been contacted by some fishermen. The question is do we have we thought of a plan or anything for the boat ramp moving into the spring? Will there be a date? Will there be passes available? Have we gotten that far? I know COVID hasn't given us very many breaks here, but have we thought into the future a little bit? They're just looking for some guidance.
So we've certainly begun to prepare for the opening of the boat ramp on what we would term to be a more traditional timeline. So we have currently we have the advertisement out for the boat ramp staff. We are just right now examining how we are going to handle the boat ramp passes and things of that nature under COVID. So that's probably the last piece of the puzzle that we've got to handle. I would suggest to you that given where we are with the pandemic at this point, outdoor activities seem to be more manageable, I'll say, than certainly indoor activities. And so I would expect that the issues that we had with the opening of the boat ramp, or the delays we had with probably more appropriately, the delays we had with the opening of the boat ramp last year, I don't foresee them to the same extent this year. And so we are working on developing that program. And so we should have information out shortly as to what that is, and we'll be sure to communicate that. We have a list going. As you can imagine, we're getting the calls as well in terms of, I'm not sure, I'm not an angler, so I don't know what fish are running, but I think that there are some running soon. And so I think that we are preparing to have what we would term to be a more normal opening to the boat ramp. And I say that knowing where we are right now with the pandemic. If the pandemic takes a turn for the worst, that may affect how the reopening plan goes. But we are looking forward to what I would term to be a more normalized opening at the boat ramp.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Your comments are appreciated.
Any other council questions? Seeing none, statements by council members. Reports from committees. Okay, confirmatory bylaw. First reading, Councillor Reno and Councillor Riccio Spagnolo. All in favor, that carries. Second reading, Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Desjardins. All in favor, that carries. Third final reading, Councillor Akpada and Councillor Reno. All in favor, that carries. You have your schedule of meetings. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, viewing audience, whoever joined us. Have a great night, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.